Chapter 196. After all, Ning Xuema already had this kind of experience. Her martial arts had also improved compared to before. At this moment, she was like a super strong dogskin plaster. She tightly held onto the eagle's thigh and stuck to it, refusing to let go. She didn't have the slightest intention of falling. Instead, her body gradually climbed up. Ning Xuema's white clothes were especially eye-catching on the dark brown eagle's back. The wind blew against her white clothes, making her look like a butterfly fluttering in the sky from afar. This scene was very shocking. The little child looked at Ning Xuema, who was gradually moving towards the left wing of the golden-eyed eagle. A strange light flashed in his eyes. This was the first time he had seen such an unyielding and clever girl, so. Not all girls were pretentious and delicate. Who was she trying to avenge by fighting so hard? According to the information he received, this girl did not even have any friends. She only relied on an old servant. Could it be that the friend she was talking about was her old servant? No, her old servant's martial arts were very ordinary. He could not even reach the second peak. He did not even have the qualifications to provoke the golden-eyed eagle. Who could it be? He was suddenly curious. He sat there, and did not move much. His eyes did not leave the eagle and human fighting in the sky. His fingers faintly formed a seal. He was about to cast a spell. Because the female eagle was desperately flying, Ning Xuema was also in danger. She did not dare to be careless. The eagle was flying so high that she did not dare to directly stab its weak point. Otherwise, it would instantly die and fall from the sky. If that happened, she would also die. She wanted to take revenge, but she did not want to lose her life, so she had been looking for an opportunity. The eagle did not manage to get her down. It was even more furious. It was also greedy for the strange dragon's meat on the ground. Damn it, it had only eaten a few mouthfuls. And its partner did not even raise her head. The meat was decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The female eagle was angry. It decided to go back to the ground and try again. Anyway, the little thing on its leg was only lying on its leg, and did not pose any real threat to it. It was more important to eat the meat. It could not let that bastard eat it all alone. The female eagle became more and more unbalanced. It simply folded its wings and dived down again. And Ning Xuema had been waiting for this moment. Her body instantly tensed up. She was getting closer and closer. Seeing that she was about 30 to 40 meters away from the ground, Ning Xuema's body suddenly shot up. Like an arrow leaving the bowstring, she directly arrived below the female eagle's left wing. The sharp stone stick that she had been holding tightly in her hand suddenly pierced towards the female eagle's weak point. Little doll, don't try to fool me. Elder sister's success or failure depends on this. She accurately identified the acupoints and poured all of her psyche power into the stone strip. It was as if she was stabbing tofu. Pooh. A sound rang out. Blood flew everywhere. The female eagle let out a mournful cry. Its body tilted to the side and fell down. After all, it was a bird, and in the process of flying down, it had a kind of inertia. Although it was crooked, it didn't fall straight down. It just happened to pass over the deep pool. Now is the time. Ning Xuema immediately loosened her grip. Her body flew down and jumped into the deep pool. Plop, plop. One small and one large falling into the water sounded one after another. After a while, Ning Xuema emerged from the water and saw the female eagle's body floating not far away. She succeeded. She finally got her revenge with her own strength. There was another eagle. Its partner had died in her hands. It was bound to come for revenge. Chapter 197. There was also another eagle. Its mate had died in her hands, so it would definitely come to seek revenge. Ning Xuema was already prepared when she floated out of the water. She even took the opportunity to grab a sharp stone. When the eagle came to catch her, she would do the same thing and hug the eagle's leg. Screech. She heard the eagle's sharp cry. A huge black shadow rushed into the sky. In a moment, it turned into a small black dot and disappeared. Ning Xuema was speechless. Wasn't it said that eagles were the most loyal to love? They only had one mate in their life. If their mate died, they wouldn't live alone. A famous poet even wrote a very famous poem about this. Ask the world, what is love? It makes people live and die for each other. Two people fly from the south and the north. How many times do old wings go through winter and summer? Joy is interesting. Parting is painful. The content of such a classic ancient poem was actually a lie. Did it have to be so deceitful? Even if it didn't die for its mate, it should at least avenge her. Why did it flap its wings and run away? Ning Xiaoma felt that her worldview had cracked. Come up. You've jumped into the lake 3 times in just a few hours. A cold voice came from above her head. It was the little child's voice. Ning Xiaoma jumped onto the shore. Then she realized that her clothes were special. They didn't get wet when she jumped into the water. After she jumped onto the shore, her clothes were still fluttering in the wind. They looked very beautiful. Moreover, there wasn't a single blood stain on them. The little guy was very generous. He actually gave her a set of treasured clothes. She smiled and picked up the little guy from the stone. She smacked a kiss on his little mouth and said, "Moi, my dear." The little child was speechless. He calmly raised his hand and wiped his lips. He had known her for less than a day, but he had been kissed by her 3 times. What was shameful was that he was actually a little used to it. He didn't feel as disgusted by her sudden attack as the previous 2 times. Anyway, she didn't know his identity. So what if she kissed him? Moi, does it mean kiss? He asked. Yeah. Ning Xiaoma answered and excitedly put him down. Her eyes were fixed on the big bird floating in the water. This is the first monster I've killed from the 9th peak. I'm going to dig out the crystal from its body. The baby pulled her back as she was rolling up her sleeves. It's too late. If you don't want to be surrounded by beasts, then leave quickly. Ning Xiaoma knew that he had a lot of experience on this mountain. She didn't have time to ask him why. She raised her hand and wanted to hug him. I'll take you and run. Although the little fellow was quite capable, she was still small and her legs were short. If she really ran, she would definitely not be able to catch up with her. The boy dodged slightly and said, "It's not convenient to carry me." "Carry me on your back." He jumped onto her back without another word. "Where's the fastest way down the mountain?" Ning Xiaoma asked. "To the east." The child was obviously very familiar with it. Ning Xiaoma immediately turned around and dashed towards the east. As soon as she ran out of the valley, she heard a few roars of beasts coming from behind. The invisible murderous aura made the ground under her feet tremble slightly. Judging from the sounds, there was more than one beast that entered the valley, and none of them were chasing after her. Ning Xiaoma heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she ran fast enough. Otherwise, her small body wouldn't be enough for the beasts to take a bite out of her. To the east, there was no road, only a fan-shaped cliff. The cliff was extremely steep, but fortunately, there were many trees growing on top of it. Ning Xiaoma's qigong was good, so climbing up the cliff was not too strenuous. Chapter 198. The little baby was also very obedient. He laid on her back and hugged Ning Xiaoma's neck loosely. His breathing was very light, and Ning Xiaoma almost could not feel his breath. Moreover, his weight was obviously lighter than other babies of the same size as him. He was only about 10 kilograms. Therefore, although Ning Xiaoma carried him on her back, she did not feel tired at all. Climbing the cliff was still very easy. The two of them also encountered a few magical beasts along the way. The little baby was especially strong today. Before Ning Xiaoma could react, he had already made his move. A few spells were cast, and before the magical beasts could reach them, they fell to the ground and died. Ning Xiaoma discovered that he used different hand seals to deal with different magic beasts. There were yellow, white, green, and blue rays of light. Every hand seal was the nemesis of the magic beast, making it so that the magic beast didn't even have the strength to retaliate, and was killed by him in a few moves. What is your element? Ning Xiaoma was puzzled. Didn't they say that the geniuses of this continent have only one element and occasionally two? She knew a few of them who were like this. For example, Ji Yunhao was of the metal element, Ji Yunhuang was of the wood and fire element, and number 2 was of the water element. However, this little baby's spells were of all 5 elements, and they were all very smooth. I am not an ordinary person. The little baby coolly replied her. That's right, he was not a human. He was a ginseng baby who had cultivated for 10,000 years. Little baby, come give sister another ginseng. Sister is hungry. Little girl, I am much older than you. Even if you call me grandpa, I may not accept you. Don't call me sister this and that. The little baby's voice was cold, and he spoke like an old man. Hee, I know. You are 10,000 years old. But who asked you to look like a baby? If you have the ability to grow up and become an adult, then I will call you grandpa. Ning Xuema smiled. The little baby pursed his lips. He did not want to lower himself to the same level as a little girl, so he slightly closed his eyes. He knew that there would be a time when she would call him grandpa. By the way, we've been through life and death together. We've known each other for so long, but I still don't know your name. Speaking of which, your ginseng has a name, right? The child paused for a moment before saying faintly, You can just call me Jiuzun. 9 Supremes? This name was quite grand. The emperor of the human world is called the emperor of the 9 and 5. If the old emperor heard you, he would probably punish you for your disrespect. He can't control me. The child's voice was indifferent. That was true. This ginseng baby was an immortal of the 9 peaks. The emperor of the human world didn't know of his existence at all. Naturally, he couldn't control him. Ning Xuema thought for a moment. Then I'll just call you Xiaojiu or Xiaozun. I feel that little 9 is easier to say. Call me Jiuzun. The child refused to budge on this point. Fine, Jiuzun it is then. Ning Xuema was too lazy to argue with him over such a trivial matter. Little Jiuzun, are you the 9th child in your family? Could it be that there were actually 9 ginseng children? The veins on the child's forehead throbbed as he said faintly, I don't have any siblings. Did you come up with this name yourself? I guess so. No wonder. It seemed that this little fellow was quite ambitious, and had been heavily influenced by the culture of the human world. He even had the intention to call himself an emperor. This name was grand, but it didn't really sound like a human name. However, he was a ginseng child. It wouldn't be strange no matter what kind of weird name he came up with. Chapter 199. As the two of them spoke, another horned lizard was eliminated. The lizard's attack speed was extremely fast, and the fireballs it spat out were not weak either. Even the rocks around it were instantly melted. If Ning Xuema were to face it alone, she probably wouldn't even be able to last a single round. However, he had this little ginseng child with him. She was in charge of dodging while he was in charge of attacking with spells. In just 2 or 3 rounds, the horned lizard was finished. Ning Xuema originally didn't have much hope of walking out of the 9th peak, but now her confidence was greatly boosted. With this little fellow by her side, it was as if she had a cheat code. Fighting felt so good. She had to think of a way to keep him by her side. Little Jiuzun, what are your plans for the future? Remove the word little. Did this little girl have to add a word? Alright Jiuzun, you don't want to stay in this mountain forever, do you? I won't. Jiuzun was very straightforward. That's good. It seemed like this little child wanted to enter the world. That's right, he knew some things about the outside world, and it seemed like he often left the mountain. Jiuzun, you've seen my body. Ning Xuema's words came from the sky. There's nothing to see. Jiuzun's most pertinent comment. Ning Xuema resisted the urge to throw him out and reasoned with him. Even if there's nothing to see, you've seen it all. You know that if a girl's body is seen naked in this world, it's equivalent to losing her virginity. So, Jiuzun's deep blue eyes narrowed slightly. There was a faint coldness in his voice. So you have to take responsibility for me. Ning Xuema replied confidently. Take responsibility for you? Marry you? Jiuzun's voice sounded like he was laughing, and it was impossible to tell if he was happy or angry. There's no need for that. Ning Xuema shook her finger. You're still so small after all this time. By the time you grow into a man, I'll already be in the ground. Maybe even my bones will rot away. I can't wait that long. She was beating around the bush so that he wouldn't marry her? She didn't care about that? Jiuzun's eyes flashed slightly, but he didn't change his expression. Then what do you want? Before I leave the Heavenly Book Mountains, you will always be by my side. I can carry you on my back all the time. Ning Xuema stated her condition. Usually, she could carry a backpack that weighed 30 to 40 kilograms as if it was just a game. This fellow was so light that she didn't feel tired carrying him. Moreover, he was like a big umbrella. It was worth it. This sovereign agrees to protect you for 1 day, only 1 day. Jiuzun spoke, his tone unquestionable. This was his bottom line. He had already broken his vow several times for her. TSK. This little fellow was really arrogant. She had just called him Jiuzun a few times and he was already calling himself the Supreme One. Alright, 1 day it was. 1 day was enough for her to run out of the 99,876th peak. For the next few peaks, she could rely on her own ability to get out. At this moment, the two of them were about to reach the peak of the mountain, but the sun was only a pole high in the sky. The day had just begun, so she still had plenty of time. Alright, 1 day it is. 1 day, an entire day, 24 hours, 24 hours. You can only leave me tomorrow at this time. Jiuzun's brows furrowed slightly. 1 day. He had other things to do at night, so he definitely couldn't bring her along. Hey, 1 day is only equivalent to half a day. 1 day. Jiuzun couldn't be bothered to reason with her. Forget it. Ning Xuema also knew that although this little fellow was young, he was a man of his word. Since he had already made up his mind, she wouldn't easily make him change his mind. If she ran a little faster, 1 day would be enough. As they spoke, they finally reached the peak of the mountain. This peak wasn't very big. Ning Xuema went around a large rock and saw the scenery on the other side. Then, she was beautifully embarrassed. Happy face. Chapter 200. The other side of the mountain, which was the side that truly descended the 9th peak, was actually straight up and down. It could be said to be at a right angle of 90 degrees. It was at least a few hundred feet high. The bottom was covered in clouds and mist, making it impossible to see the bottom. What was even more infuriating was that the entire cliff was smooth like a mirror. There wasn't even a single weed on it, much less a tree that could be used as leverage. She had seen many famous mountains and rivers, but this was the first time she had seen such a smooth cliff. Her qinggong was indeed unprecedentedly good, but she didn't dare to just jump off this mirror-like cliff. Are you messing with me? Ning Xuema's tone was unfriendly as she glanced at the little guy beside her, wishing she could kick him down. This is indeed the closest place to descend the mountain. Jiuzun's face was nonchalant. Yes, it was indeed close. She could just jump down and reach the bottom in less than a minute. Of course, that was if she didn't turn into a meat patty. Ning Xuema inwardly sucked in a breath of air and glared at him. She found a large rock and sat down. She stretched out her hand towards him. Give me another 100-year-old ginseng. She needed to replenish her strength before going to the other peaks. Do you think 100-year-old ginseng is a carrot? Who cares if you're full or not? Jiuzun sat opposite her. You're the king of ginseng. Isn't it easy to get ginseng? You can't eat anymore without ginseng. He answered simply. It seemed like this little girl had already fixed his identity. He couldn't be bothered to correct her. After all, they were just strangers who met by chance, a fate thinner than dew. There was no need to tell her his true identity. In case he scared her, besides, he didn't want anyone to know his childish appearance. If this little girl had really seen through his identity, he might just kill her to silence her. It was better for such an interesting little girl to live longer. Ning Xuema's medical skills were high, so she naturally knew that ginseng was a great tonic. If it was any other time, she would probably get a nosebleed after eating less than half of it. However, her current body was different from before. Her inner strength had increased by leaps and bounds, and she could even absorb the essence of psychokinesis from the crystal. She thought that her current body couldn't be judged by common sense. It turned out that it was impossible to chew on a tonic like sugarcane, but she was so hungry now. He couldn't help but glance at Jiuzun again. Then what else do you have to eat? Ning Xuema was born with a pair of watery eyes. At this moment, because of hunger, her eyes were even more watery. Most people would not be able to resist her gaze and would obediently hand over the items. However, Jiuzun was clearly no ordinary person. He completely ignored her expression and only said, Cloud tiger meat is edible. They had indeed killed a cloud tiger just now, and that cloud tiger was still lying on the ground not far away. Ning Xuema was speechless. It seemed that this ginseng baby was quite poor. He only had one ginseng in his pocket. The bonfire was lit again. The cloud tiger meat was cut into pieces and roasted on the tree branches. Ning Xuema's other skills were excellent, but her skills at barbecuing in the wild were ordinary. She had used the same amount of seasoning, but the taste was terrible. Using her former subordinate's evaluation of her, it was so terrible that it made one's hair stand on end. Actually, the meat of the cloud tiger was quite tender and tasted better than beef. However, after Ning Xuemo roasted a few pieces, the meat was either not cooked on the outside or was directly roasted into a piece of dried meat. Chapter 201. Ning Xuema was actually a picky eater. She naturally lost her appetite when she saw the finished product, but her stomach was growling with hunger. If she didn't eat, she would definitely run out of energy. Helpless, she could only gnaw on a piece of dried meat. As she ate the meat, she naturally thought of number 2. It was a pity that she would never be able to eat his delicious barbecued meat again. Her heart sank, and the barbecued meat in her hands became even harder to swallow. Jiuzun had started meditating when she was busy, obviously not wanting to eat the food she barbecued. Later, he probably smelled the unbearable smell of the barbecued meat. His eyebrows twitched as he opened his eyes. Just then, he saw Ning Xuema's neck stiffen as she tragically swallowed a piece of meat. Jiuzun looked at the meat in her hands in disbelief. It was as if he couldn't believe that someone as smart as her could have such amazing skills. He paused, unable to watch any longer. He walked over and tore the dried meat from her hands, tossing it aside. Dogs won't eat this even if you feed it to them. Let me do it. The little ginseng baby knew how to barbecue meat? Ning Xuema was skeptical, but she still let him take her place. After a while, Ning Xuema's eyes shone as she looked at Jiuzun. This little fellow actually had good skills. The meat he barbecued was fatty but not greasy, and tasted delicious. It was even better than the barbecued meat from her own era. Of course, it also surpassed number 2's skills. Ning Xuema hadn't eaten yet, but she was already drooling just from smelling it. Watching him barbecue meat was also a form of enjoyment. Whether it was cutting or barbecuing, his movements were exceptionally smooth. With a flick of his wrist, a piece of delicious meat was cooked. Could it be that this ginseng baby also ate meat? Jiuzun, you barbecued meat often too, right? It's really delicious. I thought you relied on photosynthesis to survive by absorbing the essence of the sun and moon. So you eat human food often too. Ning Xuema praised him as she ate heartily. Jiuzun was slightly stunned. He looked down at his hands, as if he hadn't expected himself to be so skilled at this. He was silent for a moment. Then he took out a handkerchief from somewhere and wiped his hands clean. He said faintly, "Let's eat." Once again, he went back to meditate on the big rock. Obviously, he had no intention of eating it. He roasted a lot of meat, so Ning Xuema ate to her heart's content. The thought of abducting him back home was overwhelming. Little Nine Supremes, are you bored in the mountains by yourself? Not bad. Look, you don't even have a friend here. I'm afraid you don't even have someone to talk to, right? Why don't you come back to the Marquis' estate with me? I have a lot of people there and a strange beast. If you're bored, you can play with it. I'm not going. I can take you somewhere else to play. Look at you. You've made yourself look like a fool in the mountains. You're just a kid. You should be full of vigor, but now you're acting like a little adult, learning to act cool like the emperor. You're the Nine Supremes, not the emperor. He's an old man, but you're not. Don't learn from him. Old man? Jiuzun's forehead twitched again. He glanced at her lightly. Don't judge some things for granted. Sometimes, you'll find that you're very wrong. This time he was finally more talkative. Are you saying that I was wrong in my evaluation of the emperor? He's not an old man. He can't be a child, right? Ning Xuema was very sensitive. Jiuzun was speechless. Chapter 202. Jiuzun was speechless. After Ning Xuema finished speaking, her heart skipped a beat. Could it be that the child in front of her wasn't a ginseng child, but the ancestor's nascent soul? He was in Chang Kong country's imperial palace, but his nascent soul came here to cultivate? No. People in this era cultivated psychokinesis, not Tao techniques. Only Taoists had nascent souls. If he really wanted to leave his body with his nascent soul, he had to find an absolutely quiet and safe place where no one could disturb him. He should have chosen a secluded quiet room, not Chang Kong country's imperial palace. Not to mention, not only did he keep some servants and maids by his side, he even left Ji Yunhuang there. According to Ji Yunhuang, every time the ancestor entered the imperial palace, he would have someone accompany him. Occasionally, he would even talk to someone. He didn't just sit there and meditate. Under such circumstances, he obviously couldn't leave his body with his nascent soul. Moreover, although the venerable sovereign was wearing a mask, his hair and eyes were pure black. When she took a closer look, she saw that it wasn't a wig or cosmetic contact lenses. It was all real. As for the child in front of her, his eyes were as blue as the sea and his hair was as white as snow. They weren't fake either. They shouldn't be the same person. Perhaps this child had really seen the ancestor? They had both lived for more than 1,000 years, so it wasn't strange for them to know each other. Jiuzun, have you really seen the ancestor's true face? What did he look like? People were like this. They would always be curious when they saw a person wearing a mask. They wanted to peel off the mask to take a closer look. So curious? Jiuzun looked at her with a smile that wasn't a smile. You're so young, but you already have feelings for him? Feelings my ass. I'm not so hardcore that I'm attracted to an old man. Jiuzun was speechless. She kept calling him old man, which made him want to beat her up. What if he's not an old man, but an extremely beautiful one? He glanced at her and added, maybe he's even more beautiful than you. More beautiful than her? Although her petite body hadn't fully grown yet, she was already a standard beauty. More beautiful than her? There was only one word to describe this kind of man. Ning Xuema said, I'm even less interested in a transvestite. Transvestite? What does that mean? Jiuzun was silent for a moment before he asked shamelessly. The word was so new to him that he did not understand it. Transvestite is a kind of profession. Ning Xuema wanted to give him an encyclopedia, but on second thought, there would be more new terms to explain. It would be too troublesome to explain them one by one, so she just said it directly. It's a sissy, a fake woman. Now Jiuzun understood. His expression was about to crack. Who told you that he's a sissy? Ning Xuema took another bite of the barbecued meat. Oh, it's you. Didn't you say that he's more beautiful than a beautiful woman? Don't worry, I've never been interested in men who are too beautiful. Therefore, no matter how devastatingly beautiful Dizun is, I won't like him. She still preferred those men with strong lines, who were as steady as a mountain. For example, her idol in the modern world was the tough guy Stallone, not those pretty little fresh meats. Jiuzun, I hope you'll always remember what you said. He replied faintly. This topic was too stifling, so he decided to change the topic. You're a young miss of a marquis fu. Why didn't you stay in the manor, but came to the deep mountains for? He thought for a moment. What are you running away from? Chapter 203. This little fellow was quite sharp. He also knew quite a bit. It seemed like he often walked around the world. Ning Xuema took a bite of the meat. Do you know Lahinti? How's your relationship with him? I know him, but we don't have any relationship. Why? Is it related to him that you came here? No matter how much of a ginseng child entered the world, it was impossible for him to become friends with the emperor. After all, his tender flesh was the immortality pill that the emperor yearned for day and night. It was said that Luhinti often celebrated with the people on the city gate tower, so there were quite a few people who recognized him. The little ginseng child might have seen him hidden in the crowd, so he wasn't wrong when he said, I know him, but we don't have any relationship. Ning Xuema's thoughts moved quickly, and she quickly analyzed the situation. She smiled. Yes, it has a lot to do with him. He actually took a fancy to me and sent a lot of betrothal gifts. Jiuzun looked her up and down. Didn't you break off the engagement with the sixth prince? Why? Lucian didn't agree? You even want the sixth prince to accept you? Oh, you know quite a lot about me. You even know about this? Ning Xuema looked at him suspiciously. Didn't this little child know too much? I went to your vast Sky Empire's capital about 10 days ago. Jiuzun explained simply. Looking at her oily little mouth and hands, he threw a handkerchief over. Wipe them first. The handkerchief was snow white, and it was obvious that it was made of high-quality silk. Ning Xuema looked at it without batting an eyelid. This handkerchief was made of the best materials. However, it wasn't the same as the one used by the ancestor. The patterns and texture were different as well. It seemed like they weren't the same person. That sixth prince really isn't worthy of you. Since you made a bet with the sixth prince that day, and the ancestor child is the witness, this marriage should be annulled. Lu Hinti actually dared to disagree? You misunderstood. He didn't send the betrothal gifts to propose to his sixth son. He wanted to make me a concubine, and some beast concubine. Thinking about this title, Ning Xuema was a bit angry. Beast his sister. Jiuzun. He looked at her again. I see. Why did you run away from the marriage? Isn't it the dream of many women to marry the emperor and enter his harem? Please. I'm only 13 years old this year, but he's in his 40s. He's old enough to be my father. I'm not going to marry a half-buried old man. Ning Xuema clapped her hands and stood up. All right, the gossip is over. Let's hurry up. Jiuzun slowly stood up. So in her eyes 40 plus meant he was an old coffin? Then let's go. Ning Xuema skillfully carried him on her back and turned around to walk north in large strides. She had to find another way since this route didn't work. Where are you going? To the North Peak. That stupid bird brought me up from that direction. She had been riding on the golden-eyed eagle's head. Although it had been dangerous, she had still seen the terrain clearly. Although the path down the mountain was very steep, there were many trees, so it wasn't difficult for her to go down. The North Peak is too far. Let's go this way. Jiuzun obviously didn't want to take the long route. Dear, there's not even a strand of hair growing on this cliff. How am I going to go down? Grow a pair of wings and fly me down? Ning Xuema didn't even look back as she continued walking forward. Suddenly she tripped, as if her legs were bound by something. Jiuzun's voice sounded behind her. We can only go this way. You'll think of a way. Ning Xuema. Needless to say, it was this little thing's doing that her legs were bound. Chapter 204. Ning Xuema was speechless. Needless to say, it was this little thing's doing that caused her legs to be bound. Hey little brat, let go of me. I don't have time to joke with you. Ning Xuema's voice turned cold. She didn't like this feeling of being trapped. Besides, she really didn't have much time. Do as the Supreme One says. Jiuzun had no intention of backing down. His fingertips glowed with a faint white light as he pointed at Ning Xuema's feet. Ning Xuema felt her legs heat up, and she started walking towards the edge of the cliff. Ning Xuema's expression changed slightly. She wanted to control her footsteps, but it was to no avail. The edge of the cliff was only a few feet away. Let go of me. No matter how calm Ning Xuema was, she could no longer remain calm. She loosened her arms and tried to throw the little doll on her back away. However, the doll seemed to be a part of her body. She couldn't move it, and her feet continued to move forward uncontrollably. Was this little bastard trying to kill her? Why? Wasn't everything fine just now? Ning Xuema couldn't understand, but she didn't have time to think about it in this life and death situation. Her eyes turned cold as the dagger in her hand flashed. Little thing, if you prank me again, I'll kill you immediately. We'll talk about it when you have the ability, Jiuzun replied casually. He didn't stop controlling Ning Xuema's footwork. Ning Xuema didn't hesitate anymore. Her body trembled as the dagger in her hand pierced backwards like lightning. Although her legs were controlled, her upper body wasn't. This stab was extremely forceful and contained the essence of her current martial arts. Before her dagger could touch the opponent's body, her wrist was grabbed by a small hand. What a heartless little girl. You're going to kill me now? The hand was soft and warm. The fingers couldn't even wrap around her wrist, but it was as strong as steel. Ning Xuema's wrist went numb, and she couldn't move at all. Jump down, Benzun will accompany you. Jiuzun's light breathing sounded beside her ear. In the next moment, Ning Xuema screamed as her body fell straight down. Bastard! What a freak! Ning Xuema wanted to curse out loud. The wind whistled past her ears, and her body flew down like a cannonball. Concentrate your thoughts on the Baihui acupoint and circulate the Shenting, Sea of Qi. The little child behind her suddenly recited the incantation quickly. The wind was like thunder in her ears, but the baby's voice was exceptionally clear, as if he was speaking in her mind. At this point, most people would only be left with screaming, panic, and confusion. However, Ning Xuema was no ordinary person. Her mental fortitude was extraordinarily strong. The more dangerous the situation was, the calmer her mind would be. Hearing Jiuzun's incantation, she began to execute it immediately, focusing her thoughts on her Baihui point and circulating her Shenting and other acupoints. In just 1 or 2 seconds, under such a critical situation, she was still able to concentrate and circulate her energy. This was definitely not something an ordinary person could do. This little girl was indeed a talent that could be molded. Jiuzun, who had been attached to Ning Xuema's back, had a flash of admiration in his eyes. Strangely enough, after Ning Xuema circulated her energy according to his instructions, the speed of her falling body decreased drastically. She no longer felt like a falling cannonball, but like a kite with a broken string, wobbling in the air as she fell. Jiuzun's voice rang out again, still cold and indifferent. Now concentrate your qi on your legs and circle the Tiao point. Take 2 steps diagonally. Ning Xuema naturally did as he said. Chapter 205. Naturally, Ning Xuema immediately followed his instructions. When she was falling down, her body was originally quite far away from the cliff. However, at this moment it was as if she was walking in space. Unexpectedly, she actually took 2 large steps forward. The mirror-like rock was right in front of her eyes. This time, Ning Xuema didn't wait for the child on her back to speak again. The dagger in her hand pierced into the rock wall, and her body hung there. At this moment, she had already fallen several dozen feet. Although she had used that method to slow down her fall, the inertia was still not small. After stopping on the cliff, her wrist was almost dislocated from the shock, and the wound on her palm was once again dripping with blood. Looking up, it was misty. Looking down, it was so misty that she couldn't see the bottom. She was like a flag hanging in the air with him on her back, about to be pulled away at any time. Ning Xuema's palm was burning with pain. It was also incomparably wet and slippery. Ning Xuema held on to it with all her might. She calmed herself down and finally let out a long sigh. F***ck, that scared this baby to death. Jiuzun's eyes flickered, and there was a hint of admiration in his voice. This child is worth teaching. Now pull out the dagger and use the method just now to descend. This child is worth teaching, my ass. Ning Xuema's voice was cold. Jiuzun, if I didn't succeed just now, would I have fallen to my death? If you had fallen to your death, this reputed one would have collected your corpse. Jiuzun seemed to be comforting her. Huh? Ning Xuema laughed coldly in her heart. If she could, she really wanted to pull him down and throw him out. She didn't speak to him anymore. She looked at the rock wall and then at the dagger in her hand, beginning to plan a safe landing. That kind of falling without any support was too frightening. She didn't want to experience it a second time, even if she was beaten to death. Since the dagger could be inserted into the rock wall, she could slide down slowly. This dagger was really a good one. After being tormented by her for so long, the blade didn't even curl. Now it had become her life-saving treasure. She carefully pulled the dagger out a little, wanting to leave a little to support herself as she slid down. Jiuzun, who was behind her, clearly saw through her intentions. His long eyelashes drooped slightly as he formed a seal with his fingertips. Ning Xuema's knife was pulled out automatically like a gust of wind. She heard the sound of the wind and her body fell down again. 9 Supremes, F***ck your grandpa. Ning Xuema cursed in her heart, but she didn't dare to curse out loud. It wasn't that she was afraid of the little pervert behind her, but she was afraid that once she opened her mouth, She wouldn't be able to use the psychokinesis in her body. After cursing, she would fall to her death. She cursed in her heart, but her body automatically began to circulate according to Jiuzun's instructions. Because of her previous experience, she was much more familiar with the operation this time. Her body leaned towards the mirror-like stone wall again. Be careful. Just as her knife was about to stab into the stone wall again, a black light suddenly flashed in front of her eyes and shot towards her face. That thing came so fast that Ning Xiuema didn't even see what it was. She was currently in midair and couldn't change her position. Seeing that thing pouncing towards her, she could only use the knife in her hand to block it. However, that thing was too agile. It actually twisted its body in midair and avoided Ning Xiuema's knife. Its body bent and bounced in midair, coming for Ning Xiuema's throat again. Ning Xiuema had already used her previous move and couldn't change it in time. She could only watch helplessly as a row of small, eerie teeth came for her. Tizke. A ray of white light flashed from behind her. Chapter 206. G. A ray of white light flashed from behind her, hitting the thing's body. The thing shrieked as a cloud of white smoke rose from its body, disappearing without a trace. Was it turned to dust, or did it run away? This thought only flashed through Ning Xiuema's mind. She was still falling, so she didn't have time to think about it. She was still fighting for her life in the air. Behind her, Jiuzun's eyes flashed with a strange light. You can't go any closer to the stone wall. Before he could finish his sentence, Ning Xiuema had already approached the stone wall for the third time, stabbing at it with her knife. Pooh! A soft sound like a balloon being popped rang out. Before Ning Xiuema could react, she was sucked into a huge whirlpool that suddenly appeared on the stone wall. F***ck. Did it have to be so perverted? How could there be a whirlpool on the stone wall? The whirlpool was pitch black, and Ning Xiuema couldn't help but spin inside. She felt like she had entered a washing machine that was running at high speed, spinning until her head was spinning. She subconsciously wanted to grab anything that could stabilize her body, but her surroundings were smooth and she couldn't grab anything. She couldn't have entered some super huge monster's esophagus, right? Ning Xiuema wanted to cry, but no tears came out. She felt like the thing she touched just now was some kind of... If that was really the case, how could she survive? She would be digested if she entered the monster's stomach. Forget it. She'd stab it first. Maybe it would cough her out when it was in pain. Ning Xiuema was a woman of action. When she thought of this, she immediately made her move. Although she was rolling on the ground, her blade was still very nimble. No. Before she could stab, her wrist was grabbed by someone, and Jiuzun's voice rang in her ears. Let nature take its course. Ning Xiuema finally noticed him. She was rolling at such a high speed, but he was still on her back, hugging her more tightly than an octopus. His small hand gripped her wrist, making her lose the strength to resist. Ning Xiuema didn't even have the strength to curse, so she just closed her eyes. All right, I'll let nature take its course. Together, we'll become feces in the monster's stomach. With a splash, the two of them fell into the water. Ning Xiuema struggled for a bit in the water. She felt as if she was trapped in a loose and tight cage. She had clearly fallen into the water and was surrounded by water, but when she stretched out her hand, she could not feel the presence of water. Pa! A soft sound came from beside her ear, as if some kind of protective membrane had been broken. The water from all sides surged over in an instant, drowning her. Ning Xiuema. Was there a protective layer around her just now? Needless to say, it was set up by the 9 Supremes on his back. No wonder she didn't feel anything when she was rolling down. What was he trying to do? Just now, he had forced her to jump off the cliff, but now he was teaching her martial arts in a life-and-death situation. It felt like a joke in the legends. When an eagle wanted its baby eagle to fly, it would usually kick the baby eagle off the cliff. If it didn't die from the fall, it meant that it could fly. The old eagle would at least wait until the young eagle's feathers were fully grown before doing so. But she wasn't prepared at all. She was even a MF trash, and he had just kicked her off the cliff. Not dying from the fall wasn't because she was lucky, but because her mental fortitude was strong enough, and her reflexes were superb. Ning Xuema felt that Jiuzun wasn't doing this to train her, but to do a perverted limit experiment, using her as a test subject. Chapter 207. Pervert. Her heart burned with anger as she used both her hands and legs to quickly emerge from the water. She looked around, but it was pitch black and she could not see anything. Ning Xuema initially thought that she had fallen into a monster's stomach, and that the water beneath her was its gastric juices. However, the smell around her did not seem like it. No matter what animal it was, its gastric juices were sour and the smell was unpleasant. However, the smell here was pleasant. She could faintly smell herbs and flowers, cool and fragrant. There was no light at all. Everything around her was pitch black. What was this place? Ning Xuema tried to swim forward. She could hear the sound of water splashing around her ears. That was the sound she made herself. She couldn't hear anything else. It was as if she was the only one left in the world. Ning Xuema swam for a while before her limbs suddenly stopped. Jiuzun, who had been lying on her back like gangrene, had disappeared without a trace. Her back was empty, and she felt unprecedentedly relaxed. She was silent for a moment before she called out tentatively, "Jiuzun?" There was no response from her surroundings. She could only hear her own heavy breathing. She did not give up and called out a few more times. There was no response and she could not hear any movement from him. Was he invisible? Or had he left? Ning Xuema naturally did not think that anything had happened to the child since he was so calm. If she could survive in a place like this, the child's martial arts were so perverted. Naturally, he could do it even more. Was it another perverted experiment to leave her here? It couldn't be, right? She remembered that he had wanted to stop her when she had approached the stone wall. However, it had happened so quickly that she could not react in time. Ning Xuema continued to swim forward, the surrounding darkness giving her the illusion that she was swimming in a black hole. She could not see the edge, and she could not find her own kind. The darkness gave birth to loneliness, and the bone-chilling loneliness made one feel despair. The water beneath her was icy cold, causing all her exposed parts to hurt from the cold. At this moment, she finally experienced the benefits of the robe. Wherever the robe covered, there was a faint warmth surrounding it. Ning Xuema had no doubt that if she didn't wear this robe, her entire body would probably be frozen into a lump of ice. No wonder people said that the 9th summit was the most dangerous place. There were too many unbelievable things here. Were there other ferocious beasts in the water? They were hiding in the dark, waiting to ambush her. As if responding to her sudden thought, the sound of splashing water came from the depths of the dark water. The sound was not soft, as if a large aquatic beast was about to emerge. Ning Xuema felt goosebumps all over her body. Her body tensed up and she looked back, but it was too dark and she still couldn't see anything. However, there was a ferocious aura pressing down on her from the depths of the darkness, causing her to feel cold all over, and almost unable to breathe. Splash, splash. The sound of water splashing was getting louder and louder. A great danger was approaching in the dark. Ning Xuema's hands and feet were cold. The water around her surged forward in waves, rolling up and down like the tide. Judging by the sound and the posture, it couldn't be some prehistoric aquatic beast, could it? For example, a sea monster like a long-necked dragon. Before she could finish her thought, 2 green lanterns suddenly lit up in the depths of the darkness. In such absolute darkness, a little light was quite glaring. Ning Xuema instinctively closed her eyes and quickly opened them again. She turned back to look at the 2 lanterns. Chapter 208. In such absolute darkness, even a little bit of light was quite glaring. Ning Xuema subconsciously closed her eyes and quickly opened them again. She turned around and looked at the 2 lanterns. The 2 lanterns were the size of common palace lanterns. They were slanted in the shape of a date seed, shining with a cold light. The green color was frightening. Ning Xuema's head buzzed. How were these lanterns? They were clearly the monster's eyes. If its eyes were already so big, then how big would its body be? Ning Xuema did not even think about it. She turned around and swam forward. She was not on the same level as the monster. She did not even have the chance to fight it. She was not even worth a bite of its snack. However, just as she swam a few feet away, the wind behind her was fierce. The water below her suddenly churned up a few feet high wave, rolling Ning Xiuema up to the top of the wave. Then, a bloody mouth that was as big as a blue whale's closed in on her on the top of the wave. This scene was like the most terrifying nightmare. Ning Xiuema was frozen on the top of the wave. She could not dodge at all. Was she going to die here silently? She had been struggling in this world for so long. No, she was not willing. There must be another way. Even if she died, she would fight with this thing. Perhaps this thing was only big in size and looked good on the outside but was useless. She suddenly felt hot in her sea of qi. Her body that was about to freeze suddenly could move. She immediately turned around and swam past the giant water monster's mouth, diving into the water. She knew that she would not be able to outrun this monster if she simply ran away. The only thing she could do now was to fight with her life. The sound of splashing water was louder than the sound of the stormy sea. Ning Xiuema's body was being swept up by the waves, causing her body to sway from side to side. This thing's body was so huge that there must be a big part of it in the water. She wanted to try stabbing it. She determined the monster's location based on the direction of the water flow. Then she swam over with all her strength. She finally touched the smooth and sticky scales. She quickly touched it and was shocked again. This thing's scales were as big as a dustpan. Compared to it, the knife in her hand was like an embroidery needle. How could it hurt it? Ning Xiuema had her suspicions, but it was still a chance for her to survive. Therefore, Ning Xiuema fiercely stabbed into the gap between the scales. A long whistle that was even more ear-piercing than the whistle of a train rang out in the darkness. Before Ning Xiuema could dodge her attack, she was sent flying by a powerful force. It flew in an unpredictable direction. Ning Xiuema finally understood that she had stabbed the monster's tail with her knife. That had angered the monster, so it had sent her flying with its tail. Ning Xiuema almost fainted from the whipping of its tail. Her body flew into the depths of the darkness like a shooting star, and there was nothing she could do. If there were rocks in the water, she was afraid that she would bump into thousands of peach blossoms. Ning Xiuema felt that she was a jinx today. Whatever she thought of would come true. Just as this thought flashed through her mind, she immediately saw a dense mountain of rocks pressing down on her. Just like in many melodramatic movies, the rock had sharp edges. Once she bumped into it, she would be skewered by it and become a barbecue for the sea monster. At this time, she had no choice but to close her eyes. A thought flashed through her mind. Usually, at this time, a hero would come to save the damsel in distress. From then on, he would have a passionate love affair with the female lead. Chapter 209. Would there also be some valiant warrior descending from the sky and taking her into his arms? Bang! She bumped into something hard and soft. She quickly opened her eyes and was stunned. It can't be. There really was a hero who came to save her. At that moment, she really fell into someone's arms. What was even more strange was that this man actually had Stallone's face. In front of Ning Xiuema's widened eyes, the man who resembled Stallone carried her and floated to the shore. Not bad. It was the shore. Her feet finally touched the ground. What happened next made Ning Xiuema feel like she was in a dream. The chivalrous man placed her on the ground. Then, he pulled out a machine gun out of nowhere and fired at the monster that was chasing after them. The sound of gunshots rang out like a dense rain. Ning Xiuema stood there with her hand on her forehead. She felt that her worldview was a mess. God, could it be that her idol Stallone had also transmigrated? It was too unbelievable. He actually transmigrated with a gun. He was also a foreigner, but he was much more fortunate than Tom. Her chest was still in great pain from the monster's tail. Her blood was surging crazily, and there was a metallic taste in her throat. She forced herself not to vomit blood. It was so painful. Her ribs wouldn't be broken, right? She subconsciously reached out and touched her chest. Sure enough, she felt that a large part of her chest had caved in, and 3 of her ribs were broken. The monsters on the mountain basically had scales that couldn't be penetrated by guns. This monster in the water was so big. Its scales wouldn't be so easy to penetrate, right? Although Stallone's heroic shooting skills were like Xiao Li's flying dagger, it was useless if it couldn't penetrate the monster's scales. Ning Xuemo raised her head worriedly. Sure enough, she saw Stallone's machine gun spitting out a long tongue of fire. It swept across the black monster's body, creating countless sparks. The countless bullets seemed to have hit steel, making clanging sounds and bouncing off in all directions. It really didn't work. The monster was obviously enraged. It swam toward the shore while withstanding the countless bullets. Its head was raised like a small island in the sea, and its mouth was full of fangs that gleamed coldly. Ning Xuemo's heart was beating wildly. She turned her head to look for a weapon by the shore, but there were only rocks on the shore. If only she had an armor-piercing bullet right now. It would definitely be able to pierce through its thick armor. She took a step back and seemed to have stepped on something. She looked down and her heart started to beat wildly. The heavens had finally opened their eyes. She was actually stepping on a handheld rocket launcher. She was overjoyed. She was a special agent, and she was very familiar with firearms in her previous life. Her marksmanship was also top-notch. But ever since she came to this world, she had never touched this thing again. Now that she saw it, it was as if she had seen her closest relative in the world. She picked up the rocket launcher and carried it on her shoulder. With this thing, why would she be afraid of any monster? She immediately aimed at the black monster that was rolling toward her like a gust of wind. She pulled the trigger, and the shell shot out with a flash of fire. Her marksmanship was still extremely accurate, and the bullet hit the monster's neck. The monster roared angrily, and a huge bullet hole appeared on its neck. Blood rained down like a waterfall. Success. Ning Xuemo's lips curled up slightly. No matter how powerful a monster was, it would still be defeated when it encountered a modern weapon. However, the monsters in this world were quite abnormal, especially the monsters in the 9th peak. They were all at level 7 or 8 psychokinesis. Perhaps they were like aliens that couldn't be killed and had super strong self-healing abilities. Chapter 210. As if to verify her words, the monster did not die after being hit by the bullet. It only let out a long roar, and the wound on its neck quickly healed. In a short while it was as good as new. Ning Xuemo was speechless. Let's go. My gun is out of bullets. The young version of the hero, Stallone, ran towards her, pulled her hand and ran. Ning Xuemo also realized that her rocket launcher only had one shell. She had no choice but to run. She could only hope that the monster was an aquatic beast and could not go ashore. However, things in this world were really hard to predict. There were quite a lot of amphibious monsters. Sure enough, she and the hero had just run a few dozen meters when they heard the sound of footsteps behind them. It was like the roar of a crane, shaking the entire ground. Ning Xuemo looked back in the midst of her rush. She almost wanted to cry. F***CK, this guy was not a sea monster. It was Godzilla. Godzilla is a movie. Everyone can search for it on Baidu. What kind of magical country did she transmigrate to? She vaguely felt that something was wrong, but in such an emergency situation, she did not have the time to think about it. Fortunately, she was not alone this time. She had a companion, and it was the young version of Stallone. His palm was warm and dry, and his palm was full of calluses. It was full of the iron-blooded toughness of a pure man. Ning Xuemo ran with him. After all, she had struggled for so long. At that moment, she was already at the end of her rope. Her footsteps were getting heavier and heavier. In the end, she could not keep up with the hero Stallone's footsteps. The monster behind them was rapidly approaching. Obviously, it did not want to let the two of them go. And this vast world was boundless. Their running speed could not be compared to the monster behind them. It was only a matter of time before they were eaten. A thought arose in Ning Xuemo's mind. Actually, if she could die with her idol, it would not be too unjust, right? It was better than dying alone. With this thought, she felt her footsteps become heavier. Even her hero's steps slowed down. The shadow of death loomed over her head. Ning Xuemo suddenly flew into the arms of the hero beside her. She hugged his neck and kissed his lips. She wanted to fulfill her dream before she died. Her dream was to see the young Stallone and give him a big kiss. Stallone's body stiffened slightly, but he did not dodge. Just as Ning Xiuma's little mouth was about to touch her idol's lips, a corner of the dusky sky seemed to be suddenly torn open. A figure floated down, and before that person landed, a white light shot out of his hand. Ning Xiuma's body went numb, and she fell from her idol's arms. Then she was pulled by a hand and staggered, like a fluttering flag. Her body involuntarily followed him and leaped 70 to 80 feet away. At this moment, the monster finally caught up. With a swing of its tail, it sent his idol Stallone, who was still standing at the same spot, flying into the air. Ning Xiuma was shocked. Stallone! She wanted to rush over to rescue him. Idiot, this is an illusion. Wake up. The voice of Jiuzun, whom she had not heard for a long time, rang in her ears. At the same time, a surge of energy surged into her palm, following her blood vessels and rushing to the top of her head. Her mind exploded, and her entire body shuddered. Illusion. None of this was real. She suddenly looked up and saw Stallone's body in the air melting like snow under the scorching sun. Chapter 211. She turned to look at the huge, friendless black Godzilla, but that thing was still standing in the same spot, glaring at her fiercely with its large, lantern-like eyes. Seeing Ning Xiuma looking at it, it immediately raised its head and roared, pouncing towards her. Damn, if this was an illusion, why was this thing still here? This thing's body was too huge, and when it pounced over, it brought with it a tornado, almost sweeping Ning Xiuma and Jiuzun's bodies up. Ning Xiuma wanted to turn and run, but her footsteps were heavy, as if her feet were chained, and she couldn't take a single step. Damn it! Jiuzun cursed under his breath and raised his palm. White light spread out like a net above the two of them, blocking Godzilla's mouth that was about to bite them. It's a creature of your imagination. Quickly think of it as a useless bug. Jiuzun shouted. His small face instantly turned as white as a sheet of paper. This monster's strength was too strong, and he almost couldn't resist it. What was this little girl's mind filled with? She could actually imagine such a perverted monster, and even with his current strength he couldn't withstand it. This illusion was her imagination, so the things inside had to be changed through her. Roar! The monster's body was blocked by the white net, and it was instantly enraged, slamming against it with all its might. It was a figment of her imagination? Ning Xiuma's thoughts flashed through her mind like lightning, recalling the series of events that had just happened. It seemed that whatever she thought of, it would immediately appear here. Although she didn't know what was going on, since she knew that this was her imagination, it was easy to handle. She was in charge of her imagination. Quickly think of it as a bug, a little snake. Whatever it is, it's your inner demon, and it won't disappear on its own, Jiuzun quickly explained. As expected, Ning Xiuma closed her eyes slightly, looking like she was going to focus and follow his instructions. Unexpectedly, the moment she opened her eyes, she turned around and scooped up a strange-looking weapon from the ground. What was she doing? Ning Xiuma raised her head. Her originally messy bun had already loosened up and draped over her shoulders like flowing water. She slung the strange-looking weapon over her shoulder and leapt, flying out of the monster's range. Standing on a large rock not far away, she smiled at him. Jiuzun, I'll have to trouble you to hold on. The little girl's smile was sweet, her movements elegant and dashing. Just as she finished speaking, the gigantic monster became even more irritable. Its roar shook the heavens and earth as it charged towards Jiuzun even more ferociously. Its strength had more than doubled. Jiuzun was already having a hard time, and now, it was even harder for him to hold on. With a soft sound, the white net of light was torn apart by the monster's bite. Its sharp teeth bit towards Jiuzun's small body. That little girl did it on purpose. She wanted to take revenge on him. Jiuzun was a seasoned veteran. His body rose and he retreated like water. His movements were fast and indescribable, as free and unrestrained as the clouds. According to his own estimation, he could retreat more than 100 feet, just enough to escape the monster's huge mouth. However, he didn't expect that just as he retreated halfway, a rope would suddenly appear on the ground. He couldn't dodge in time, and the rope tripped him on his leg. His body staggered, and he nearly fell down. In this short delay, the monster's bloody mouth was already less than 2 feet away from his head. Its saliva was almost dripping onto his body. Chapter 212. The stench was so strong that it made one want to vomit. D***M*. Jiuzun was about to change his move when his legs were suddenly tightened. The rope that had almost tripped him had wrapped itself around his legs in the blink of an eye. He was halfway through his move when he was pulled by a force, falling to the ground with a thud. Just as the monster's mouth was about to chomp down on his clothes, a deafening bang rang out. The monster's body shook violently as a bloody hole appeared on its head. Fresh blood spurted out like an open shower, splattering onto Jiuzun's face and head. Jiuzun took the opportunity to roll away, finally escaping from the monster's mouth. He leapt up and looked towards Ningxiuema, who was not far away. The girl's eyes were bright, her mouth curved like a bean pod. Jiuzun, be careful. Seeing little Wimp cut an unprecedented sorry figure because of her, Ningxiuema simply felt refreshed. Who asked you to force me to jump off the cliff again? Let a pervert like you do the damned limit test again. She wanted him to have a taste of being controlled by someone else, of not being able to control his own life and death. Also, this was indeed her illusory realm. As long as she concentrated a little, she could control everything in this space. For example, she could casually pick up a gun, weaken the brat Jiuzun, or increase the monster's strength. It felt so good to be God. Jiuzun squinted his eyes, a light flickering in his pupils. This girl had almost no psychokinesis in her, but her true willpower was astounding. Most people wouldn't be able to control the things in the illusion, even if they knew that it was their own illusion. After all, the human heart was complicated, and there were too many things that could be stored in it. A slight thought could cause many changes, and they would be swallowed by the illusion they created. Even if there were some geniuses, it would be impressive if they could kill their inner demons in the illusion. No one had been able to completely control the situation. The wound on the monster's forehead healed quickly. With a loud roar, it pounced towards Jiuzun once more. Ningxiuema stood with her rocket launcher in high spirits. She was going to play with this Jiuzun. She wanted to see what tricks this Jiuzun would play under such circumstances. The monster opened its mouth and spat out a white, frosty air that enveloped Jiuzun. Ningxiuema knew that Jiuzun would definitely be able to dodge it with his skills. She had even calculated in her mind which direction he would hide in, and which direction she would conjure the rope. But he didn't expect that little brat to just stand there, with no intention of dodging at all. The white chi enveloped Jiuzun's entire body, instantly freezing him into an ice sculpture. The monster's movements were as fast as lightning. It opened its mouth and swallowed him whole. Ningxiuema suddenly widened her eyes. Heavens, she really didn't want to kill this little brat. Could he really be dead? She promptly fired a rocket launcher at the monster's heart, causing it to fall to the ground with a loud thud. In a flash, a snow-white broadsword appeared in Ningxiuema's hand. She jumped onto the monster's body and slashed at its stomach. Because his emotions were unstable at the moment, he was a little flustered. While she was panicking, the monster's stomach actually became harder than steel. Her slash was rebounded, causing her wrist to go numb and the blade to almost fly out of her hand. She was shocked once more. She sucked in a breath and tried to concentrate, imagining that the monster's stomach was softer than cotton. However, it was obvious that it didn't work this time. The monster's stomach was still as hard as before. She almost slipped as she stood on it. Chapter 213. This couldn't go on. How long could a person last in the monster's stomach? Although he was strong enough, this was still within her consciousness. She gritted her teeth and another plasma cutter appeared in her hand, slicing towards the monster's stomach. Jiuzun, you have to hold on. You'd be a coward if you died here. The layer of skin on the monster's stomach was finally cut open. Ningxiuema regretted imagining the monster to be so big. It was the size of a building, and its stomach was huge as well. Although Ningxiuema had found the right spot, it still took a lot of effort to cut open such a thick layer of flesh to find its stomach. After cutting open the monster's stomach, A shiny Japanese military knife appeared in her hand. About a quarter of an hour later, she finally cut open the monster's stomach. The stomach was about the size of a small house. Ning Xiaomo resisted the acrid stench that assailed her nostrils and peeked inside. Other than some food scraps, she couldn't see anything else. Ning Xiaomo looked at the bubbling gastric juices, and her heart slowly sank. Could it be that it was already digested? It can't be that fast, right? This gastric juice wasn't sulfuric acid. How could it corrode so quickly? She steeled her heart, and was about to jump in to take a look when a voice rang out from behind her. No need to look, I'm here. It was a child's clear voice, but it carried a hint of laziness. Ning Xiaomo slowly turned back to see Jiuzun standing not too far away, examining the plasma cutter she had thrown aside. You weren't swallowed? Ning Xiaomo jumped down from the monster's stomach. Nonsense. Jiuzun's reply was casual. He seemed to still be interested in the machine, not even raising his head. I clearly saw you being swallowed. Ning Xiaomo didn't believe that there was something wrong with her eyes. It swallowed rocks. Jiuzun began to study the rocket launcher on the ground. Ning Xiaomo finally understood. You used a trick just now? Of course. Am I supposed to wait to be swallowed? This is an illusion created by my will. Shouldn't you follow my will completely? The illusion is indeed yours, but the main body is real. In your illusion, my power will be weakened, but I won't be so weak that I won't be able to withstand a single blow. Perhaps it was because he was happy to see something new, so he spoke more than usual. So that was how it was. Ning Xiaomo wrung her hands in her heart. When she looked up, her expression changed slightly. Jiuzun placed the rocket launcher on his frail shoulders and aimed it at her. His small hand was on the trigger, F***CK. She had already set the rocket launcher to fire, and now there was a shell on it. Hero, let's talk nicely. Put that thing down. Ning Xiaomo tried his best to concentrate, trying to make the shell on the rocket launcher disappear, but it was useless. It's useless. These things will appear with just a thought. There won't be any other changes. Jiuzun raised the rocket launcher. He still had the body of a 1-year-old child, and it was a little comical for him to carry such a large weapon of mass destruction. However, Ning Xiaomo couldn't bring herself to smile. Be careful. Don't misfire. She reminded him, then threatened. Don't think that it's easy for me to use it. This thing has a huge recoil. You'll be injured even if you fire it. Is that so? Jiuzun raised his arm. With a loud bang, the shell flew over Ning Xiaomo's head and hit the monster behind her. Chapter 214. Is that so? Jiuzun raised his arm and with a loud bang, a missile flew over Ning Xiaomo's head and into the monster behind her. Unexpectedly, they also hit the spot where Ning Xiaomo had just hit. The two shells left a bullet hole. Did he have to be so perverse? How could an ancient person like him be so accurate with his gun? Ning Xiaomo looked at Jiuzun, who was still standing there calmly, and was speechless. The reaction force is not small, but it's still within this sovereign's control. Jiuzun aimed the rocket launcher at her again. What's this called? Rocket launcher. Ning Xiaomo sighed, looking at him with watery eyes. You weren't swallowed just now, so why didn't you appear earlier? You made me risk my life to break open this monster's stomach to save you. I didn't want you to die. I wanted you to live well. I know. Otherwise, do you think you can still stand here and talk to this sovereign so casually? Ning Xiaomo pursed her lips. You said that this is my mental world. In this world, she was the boss. Your control over your mental world isn't very good. You're still lacking a bit. This sovereign has 10,000 ways to make you suffer from qi deviation here. Never to leave again. Jiuzun's voice was still indifferent. Ning Xiaomo's eyes flashed, and she looked like she was admitting defeat. All right, I admit defeat. You're the one who's more capable. How are we going to leave? She had already killed the so-called inner demon, so why was it still here? There are so many weird things in your mental world. Jiuzun's hand touched the rocket launcher, and his eyes glanced at the cutting machine on the ground. He was 70% convinced of what Ning Xiaomo had said yesterday. Although he had never seen these things before, he could tell that the parts were all very mature. They weren't things that could just appear out of thin air. This monster was also a species he had never seen before, and the man who had come to save her. He narrowed his eyes. Who is that man? Ning Xuema didn't hide it. My idol. A tough guy. Idol? It's someone you worship. Ning Xuema explained. You admire someone like this? Jiuzun felt that her sense of beauty was a little strange. What was there to like about such a big and burly man? That's right. That's a real man. A standard man's true colors. Jiuzun looked at her again. So you threw yourself into his arms? Have you always liked to take advantage of men? His voice was cold. Ning Xuema secretly rolled her eyes. He made it sound like she was a perverted woman. She had lived for so long, but she had never really kissed a man before. Just now, I thought I was going to die, so I kissed my idol so that I wouldn't die with regrets. What do you mean by taking advantage of men? Ning Xuemo retorted. I just want to kiss him. But you've kissed me too. Jiuzun's tone was slightly unfriendly. Dear, you're just a little doll. What kind of man are you? Ning Xuema was speechless. She didn't want to talk about this topic with him anymore. How are we going to get out of here? She looked at herself, still feeling that it was a little unreal. I remember that we fell into a whirlpool cave and fell here. How did it become an illusion of my own mind? You want to know? Of course. Then go out and see for yourself. Jiuzun raised his hand, and a wave of white light shot over. Ning Xuema felt her vision brighten, and then her forehead hurt. Her vision turned black, and then the white light dissipated. Chapter 215. She opened her eyes abruptly, realizing that her surroundings had completely changed. The dark deep sea, Godzilla, strange rocks, they were all gone. She was lying on a clean mountain rock, a little doll nestled on her chest. Their bodies were pressed tightly together, their hands clasped together in an intimate position. His head was resting on her chest, and his silver hair spread out like moonlight. It was as smooth as silk on her skin, and it tickled her. Wait a minute. Ning Xuema seemed to have sensed something as she lowered her head to look at her body. Then she was embarrassed. Her body was practically naked. The white robe was nowhere to be seen, and only the hand-sewn panties were still there to at least cover her body. The little doll was only wearing a dudu as he lay on her body, his limbs pressed tightly against her without any gap between them. Although Ning Xuema had always been thick-skinned, she was still struck by lightning when she saw herself in this state. Damn, this little brat was acting like a rogue. She raised her hand, wanting to push the doll off her chest. A faint white light flashed in front of her eyes, and Jiuzun, who was lying on her chest, suddenly disappeared. Ning Xuema suddenly sat up. She crossed her arms over her chest and looked around. Then, she secretly ground her teeth. In the blink of an eye, Jiuzun had already changed his attire. The dudu was gone, and he was still wearing the little robe that was more elegant than the clouds and whiter than the snow. He stood there casually, as if the naked doll lying in her arms just now wasn't him. He casually tossed a robe over. Put it on. Ning Xuema couldn't be bothered to settle the score with him for the time being. She hurriedly put the robe on. What did you mean by that? She felt that Jiuzun was a little perverted, but he didn't have such perverted hobbies. Jiuzun walked forward without turning back. You're as unconscious as a pig. Lightning can't wake you up, so Benzun can only go in to get you. How could she not be awakened by lightning? She wouldn't even wake up if he kicked her. He could only take the risk of using the spirit anchoring spell to enter her consciousness. Using the spirit anchoring spell, he could only do it in this position. You're the pig. I fainted because of this strange cave, right? What was going on? Where is this place? Ning Xuema quickly caught up with him and retorted bluntly. Ning Xuema looked all around. She could already tell that this was a cave. Moreover, it was a grotesquely shaped cave. The walls of the cave were made of dark blue, translucent rocks. Deep within the rocks, there seemed to be water flowing. It was like a crystal tunnel. When Ning Xuema saw this, she had an illusion. She walked in here as if she was walking in a sightseeing underwater tunnel. It was a grotesque scene, but she couldn't see where the entrance she fell into was. Looking ahead, the passageway was extremely long and winding. It was unknown where it led to. Little girl, you're very lucky. You actually ran into the 10,000-year stone essences market today. We are now in its stomach. As for why you fainted, it's because there's an aura here that can cause anyone who enters to fall into their inner demons. In there, the more you fear something, the more likely it will happen, until your soul is swallowed up by the inner demons and your soul disperses. She clearly had the appearance of a child, and her voice was tender and crisp, but her tone was extremely light, like flowing ice hitting the mountain rocks. Although it sounded indescribably pleasant, it was also a little strange. After he explained so much, Ning Xuema understood most of it. However, there were still a few things she didn't understand. She immediately asked the key questions. What is a stone essence? Is it an animal or a plant? Since everyone who enters will fall into their inner demons, why didn't you? Chapter 216. The stone spirit is a spiritual object formed by absorbing the essence of heaven and earth. It can be big or small, and can change into anything. It has no specific shape and hides in the mountains. It only appears once every 1,000 years. The place and time of appearance are not fixed. It only appeared once every 1,000 years and she had caught it. She was really lucky. Ning Xuema didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The stone spirit's explanation reminded her of the mountain gods in the myths and legends of her time. If it was formed by the spiritual energy of the mountains, wouldn't it be a mountain god? They were in the stomach of a mountain god. Why was this explanation so terrifying? So were they in its esophagus or its intestines? How were they going to get out? Did they have to go through the back door? Would they encounter other food scraps that the stone spirit had swallowed along the way? Countless questions hovered in Ning Xuema's mind. She picked the most important one. How are we going to get out? I don't know. The baby answered simply. It's my first time here too. Fine. Ning Xuema shut her mouth. She was indeed the king of luck. She had only been here for a short while, and she had already encountered such a thing. Could there be treasures in the stomach of the mountain spirit? It must have eaten many good things all these years. Maybe there were some rare treasures. She looked around but didn't see any danger. The tunnel was very clean. The material under her feet was the same as the cave walls, like crystal bricks. It didn't hurt her feet when she stepped on it. Occasionally, there would be scattered large rocks of different shapes and sizes in the tunnel. Ning Xuema had just woken up on one of the rocks. Another large boulder appeared in front of her. Ning Xuema sized up the boulder with a glance, and her heart suddenly moved. The shape of the rock was actually like a giant python. It was long and the front part vaguely looked like a snake's head with its mouth open. It was even more perfect than the masterpiece of a master. It was also the same color as the surrounding cave walls. It was slightly transparent and there was a ball of shadow inside. Ning Xuema looked inside for a moment, and her eyes widened in shock. Why does it look like there's something sealed inside? There's really a python inside. And a skinless one too. These stones were originally formed by animals that accidentally trespassed. Jiuzun seemed to know everything. Ning Xuema recalled the huge rocks she saw when she passed by. Sure enough, they looked like all kinds of animals. There were more and more strangely shaped rocks in front of them. Ning Xuema observed carefully, and found that some animals were sealed in these strange rocks. They seemed to be formed according to the size of the animals. It looked a little like the amber used to seal small animals. The amber was formed when pine resin dripped down and wrapped around the worms. These animals were so huge. How could they be sealed here? Why didn't they have any skin? Jiuzun, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped in front of a tall and thin rock. There weren't many things that could make Jiuzun stop in his tracks. Ning Xuema gave up on observing a tiger-shaped rock and walked briskly to the tall and skinny rock. Upon closer inspection, his expression changed slightly. There's someone inside. There was indeed a person sealed in the rock. Not only did this person not shed his skin, he was even wearing clothes. The translucent layer of stone that enveloped this person was very thin. In addition, This layer of stone had strong anti-corrosion properties. The person inside was still the same as when he was alive. Therefore, Ning Xiuema could see the person's face and body clearly. Chapter 217. It was an exceptionally handsome man with sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, a high nose bridge and thin lips. He had a green jade hairpin on his head and wore a light blue robe. The quality of this blue robe was obviously very good. Its color was as soft as the lake water, and there were scaly patterns on it. A sparkling and translucent white jade belt was tied around his waist, and a jade pendant with a pair of fish hung from the belt. His standing posture was somewhat strange. Both of his arms were folded in front of him, as if he was hugging something. His expression seemed to be both painful and joyful. Beside his feet was a strange-looking sword. He was frozen in place, and it was unknown how long he had been standing there, but he seemed to have turned into a fossil. Ning Xiuema's gaze circled around the handsome guy's face before landing on his collar. On the left side of his collar, there was a cloud embroidered, while on the right side, there were 9 stars embroidered. This man was from the Sun-Moon sect. Furthermore, looking at those stars, he was the ancestor's direct disciple. In the Sun-Moon sect, only the ancestor's direct disciples could embroider 9 stars. Who could this be? The ancestor had a total of 18 disciples, and 12 of them were still alive. Their whereabouts were also well documented. This person was obviously one of the 6 disciples who had already passed away. Of the 6 disciples, the highest had cultivated to Earth Realm level 9. Although their lifespan had been extended, they were not immortal. 5 of them had died of natural causes, which could be considered a good ending. Only the 5th disciple had disappeared in the prime of his life. As for how he had disappeared, it was too long ago, and the Sun-Moon sect's style of doing things was relatively mysterious. Therefore no one knew. Ning Xiuema only knew from a few scattered records that the missing disciple of the ancestor was not only a rare martial arts genius, but also a prince with a high position and great talent. He had broken through to Earth Realm level 6 at a young age, and was considered one of the most likely candidates to break through the life and death barrier. He was also the most favored disciple of the ancestor, and the most complete and profound martial arts he had been imparted to him. If he had ascended the throne, he would have definitely become the emperor of the ages. However, no one expected that when he was 27 or 28 years old he would suddenly disappear. Since then, the ancestor had added another rule to his disciple selection, and that was to not accept disciples of the imperial family. This was also one of the main reasons why the ancestor did not accept a genius like Ji Yunhuang. Ning Xiuema looked at the peerless man sealed in the stone. Needless to say, this should be the missing prince, the ancestor's favorite 5th disciple. Ning Xiuema shot a glance at the child beside her. The child was currently raising his head to look at the translucent stone sculpture. He did not say anything, and his face was expressionless. Only his pair of blue eyes were like an ice lake under the moonlight, faintly flickering with light. Ning Xiuema didn't look at him anymore. She just gently stroked the stone sculpture of the prince. His skin didn't fall off. How did he die? Jiuzun's voice was indifferent. His cultivation is high, so he won't be injured by the heaven-splitting wind that entered his mouth. That's why his skin is still intact. However, he didn't manage to escape the inner demons of his nightmares and his soul was scattered. It turned out that the inner demons of the nightmares were so powerful. It could actually scatter the soul of such a genius expert. For a newbie like her, if Jiuzun hadn't used a special method to enter her mind to save her, she would probably have been devoured by the inner demons as well. Not even a speck of her soul would be left behind. Only this small body would be left here, like the humans and animals who had mistakenly entered, turned into a small stone sculpture. Wait, he said that there was a heaven-splitting wind at the entrance that could tear the flesh of those who had mistakenly entered. Then why was she fine? Chapter 218. She recalled the skin-like thing she had touched when she was tumbling in the whirlpool. At that time, she had thought that she had touched the monster's intestines. Now, it seemed like there was a protective barrier around her, preventing her from being injured by the Tianlai wind, and allowing her to land safely. Needless to say, that protective barrier must have been set up by Jiuzun behind her. This meant that Jiuzun had already saved her twice without batting an eyelid after meeting the stone spirit. Alright, seeing that he had saved her twice, she would magnanimously not pursue the matter of him forcing her to jump off the cliff. She glanced at the little brat beside her. She hadn't paid much attention to him earlier, but now it seemed that the little fellow's complexion wasn't too good. He was paler than before, and even his originally bright red lips were like faded petals, making one's heart ache. Jiuzun, thank you for saving my life twice. I won't pursue the matter of you teasing me in the past. Let's call it even. Even. Jiuzun's lips twitched slightly, but he didn't comment. Because of this little girl's sudden intrusion, his cultivation this time had been wasted, and he had been unable to return to his human form. His cultivation had been greatly reduced, not even a fifth of his usual strength. He had only wanted to send her down the mountain quickly, but he hadn't expected to meet the stone spirit again. To save her twice, he had used up more than half of his current cultivation. It was really one disaster after another. Although this little girl was a very special existence, she was also a real troublemaker. He was speechless. The debt between them was not even now, but he would get it back sooner or later. He wouldn't let his efforts be in vain. He didn't look at the stone statue anymore and strode forward. Let's go. His legs were short, and he didn't use any special methods to walk. Ning Xuema caught up with him in a few steps and asked casually, since you're familiar with the ancestor, you must know the person in the stone statue, right? So what if I know him? And so what if I don't? Jiuzun didn't stop walking. That person is the ancestor's missing disciple. Now that we finally found him here, aren't you going to help us get his body out? Even if you don't return him to the ancestor, at least let him rest in peace. The body is just a bag of skin, no different from grass and trees. Since he has already turned into a mountain rock, let him stay here. The 9 Supremes were unmoved. They had no intention of burying the prince's body. How cold-blooded. Ning Xuema overtook him in a few steps and said in a gossipy voice, is this the ancestor's 5th disciple? He was so handsome. I heard that he is a prince. You've heard quite a lot. Jiuzun gave her a few words of evaluation. It's said that he's a man of great talent and bold vision. If he manages to ascend to the throne, he might become an emperor for all eternity. There must be a lot of girls who like him. Ning Xuema continued to gossip. Jiuzun's reply was even shorter this time. Ning Xuema originally wanted to get more information from him, but she didn't expect this guy to be so calm and collected. She didn't get anything out of him. She gently pursed her lips and continued to gossip about this prince, telling him almost everything she knew. She was eloquent and could be said to be incessant. However, Jiuzun rarely responded to her gossip. At most, he would reply with 3 to 5 words. After she talked for 3 to 4 minutes, he finally said, don't be a love-struck fool. He's already been dead for 1,000 years. He's not fated to be with you. Chapter 219. Ning Xuema was speechless. She pursed her lips and smiled. That's hard to say. Maybe he's already reincarnated. Maybe we're fated to meet in this life. Jiuzun's blue eyes darkened slightly as he looked at her, as if trying to see something through her. A hint of contemplation flashed through his eyes. Don't you like tall and strong men? He hadn't forgotten that she had almost kissed that muscular man in her nightmare, and she'd even taken the initiative. Ning Xuema sighed. There are too few men like my idol in this era. I can't be an old lady in the future, so I can only settle for the next best thing. Actually, although this prince looks a little feminine, he still looks quite manly. If he's reincarnated, he'll definitely still look like this. Stop dreaming. Jiuzun interrupted her rudely. Souls are formless. Every time they're reincarnated, they'll look like their parents in the present world. Not to mention that his soul has already dispersed and can't be reincarnated. Even if he's reincarnated due to some special karma, his appearance will still change. He won't look like what you see now. Ning Xuema's eyes curved like crescent moons. She suddenly raised a hand to pat his head. Jiuzun, I couldn't tell that a brat like you knows so much. Being with you has really broadened my horizons. His hair was so smooth. It was smoother than the hair of the shampoo advertisement girls. It felt so good to touch. Jiuzun obviously didn't expect her to touch him again. He didn't avoid it and was touched on the head by her small hand. He was speechless. This small body was really inconvenient. It hadn't even been a day, and he'd already been taken advantage of by her. With a single step, he was already 10 feet away from her. His voice was icy. Touch me again, and this Zun will chop off your hand. His words were full of threat. If it were any other time, it would be enough to scare everyone into silence. But now his voice was crisp and childish. Not only did it not scare Ning Xuema, it made her laugh instead. What was worse was that as soon as he finished his threat, he was tripped by something. He staggered and almost flew out. Of course, his reaction was extremely fast. He took advantage of the momentum and somersaulted in the air. When he landed on the ground again, he was already standing firm. Ning Xuema clapped her hands and laughed. Jiuzun's skills are amazing. This somersault was beautiful. Jiuzun. He suddenly raised his hand and a white light flashed towards Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema couldn't help but tumble 3 times like a windmill. When she landed, she tripped over something and almost fell flat on her face. Your somersaults aren't bad, but your lower body isn't stable. You still need more practice. Stay in the horse stance for an hour. Jiuzun sat down cross-legged, and Ning Xuema's legs didn't seem to be her own. She actually automatically got into a horse stance, and her posture was very standard. Ning Xuema. Her body stiffened, as if she had suddenly turned into a block of wood. Only her eyes could still move. This little fellow was also one to take revenge for the smallest grievance. She wasn't the one who tripped him up. She had only seen a small joke, and he was already taking his revenge. Her head couldn't move and Jiuzun was sitting not far behind her. She couldn't see what he was doing. Ning Xuema wasn't in a hurry. There were only the 2 of them in this place. In this unknown environment, they were each other's companions. He wouldn't leave her alone. Chapter 220. Ning Xuema was not in a hurry. There were only the 2 of them in this place. In such an unknown environment, they were each other's companions. He would not leave her behind and leave her alone. Besides, this place was not suitable for staying for too long. Even if he punished her by squatting in the horse stance, it would not be for too long. Usually, she would do the horse stance to practice her lower body. Now, she would just treat it as practice. She closed her eyes and quietly adjusted her breathing. Then she realized that the strange energy in her body had grown stronger. It flowed slowly in her body, as comfortable as a mountain stream. This should be psychokinesis. She finally had her own psychokinesis. She knew that her dantian was the place that devoured all psychokinesis, so she purposely prevented her psychokinesis from passing through that place, only circling around other places. Then she discovered something that surprised her. She had taken many risks along the way and suffered many external wounds. Although she had already treated them, the days were too short. Those wounds still hurt from time to time, and some of them were even cracked open. However, after the psychokinesis flowed through these places, the wounds healed at an amazing speed. Although she could not see it, she could feel the strange itchiness when the wounds healed. It was as if she had been cast the rejuvenation spell in the game. She circulated the psychokinesis in her body once before opening her eyes. She did not know how long she had been squatting here, but she could clearly feel the numbness and pain in her legs. Yet she could not move. Hey Jiuzun, have you had enough? Undo it for me. Ning Xuema could still move her mouth. She finally could not help but speak. There was no movement behind her. I know you're behind me. Alright, undo it for me now. Can I apologize to you? Since the hard way did not work, she tried the soft way. Still there was no movement. She paused for a moment, and listened attentively. Her surroundings were as quiet as an ancient tomb. There was no sound at all. She could not even hear his breathing. That little bastard would not leave her behind and run away, would he? Plop! A drop of something dripped onto her head. Only then did she realize that there was something heavy on the top of her head. After the liquid dripped onto her head, it did not roll down her head. Ning Xuemo recalled the various stone statues in the corridor, and the hairs on his back almost stood up. These stone statues were like the stalactites that we often see. They were formed by the liquid dripping from the cave over the years, and gradually petrified. That should be the liquid that dripped onto her head. She was a little flustered and couldn't help but shout a few more times. Soft, hard, begging for mercy, threatening, she said all kinds of things, but to no avail. There was still no movement around her. It was as if Jiuzun had really left and no longer cared about her. She became more and more alarmed. Since she couldn't call for outside help, she thought of ways to rely on herself. She began to use her psychokinesis to attack the sealed area. However, this Jiuzun's method of restraint was obviously different from acupuncture. Her efforts were futile. Her body still could not move, but more and more liquid dripped onto her head. She felt as if there was a steel helmet on her head, and it was getting heavier and heavier. A drop of liquid was dripping onto the tip of her nose. She then realized in horror that the liquid was no longer flowing down, but had solidified there. If this continued, her facial features would soon be sealed. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before she would also become a stone statue and suffocate to death. Chapter 221. Jiuzun, you pervert. Laozi curses you to never grow up again. Forever a little brat. Ning Xuema finally couldn't help but curse. What did you say? There was finally some movement behind her. A small figure slowly turned in front of her, a pair of blue eyes looking at her indifferently. So he hadn't left. So he had been behind her all along. Apologize. Apologize and Benzin will let you go. Jiuzun's expression was even calmer. His complexion looked much better than before, his originally pale face now having an apple-like blush. It seemed that the meditation earlier had helped him recover quite a bit. After being together for so long, he had a general understanding of her personality. He thought that she would stubbornly say no, but he didn't expect her to smile and say, "I'm sorry." The most important requirement of being a secret agent was to be able to judge the situation, to know when to yield and when to stand tall. Her words were straightforward, but there was also a faint sense of alienation. Jiuzun's eyes flashed as he looked at her expression for a moment. Ning Xuemo remained calm. Jiuzun, I've already apologized as you wished. Can you let me go now? Jiuzun raised his sleeve and Ning Xuemo's body heated up. She finally regained her freedom. She moved her stiff limbs, waiting for the numbness in her legs to subside before taking large strides forward. The young lady finally stopped talking so much. Satisfied, Jiuzun followed behind her easily. This tunnel was actually longer than it had ever been. The two of them walked at a rather fast pace, walking for about 4 hours without seeing the end. It really did feel like they were walking in intestines, with all the twists and turns. Other than the various stone statues they had seen at the beginning, there was nothing else. When they reached the depths, there weren't even any stone statues. Ning Xuema was very quiet along the way, not saying a word. Only the sound of their footsteps could be heard in the tunnel. Jiuzun raised his head to look at Ning Xuema, who was taking large strides forward, with a complicated expression in his eyes. He had always liked peace and quiet. His disciples were all focused in front of him, not daring to utter a single word. His days were like a pool of water, calm and without ripples. But ever since he met her, his peaceful pace had been completely disrupted. She was a talkative person. Because she didn't know his identity, she spoke to him impolitely, willfully and willfully. She joked with him, even flirted with him. He wasn't used to it, but he felt that it was tolerable. When she was chattering away, he hated that she was making so much noise that he wanted to seal her mouth with a spell. But now that she had suddenly quieted down, he felt that something was missing. How did you get to the 9th summit? For the first time, he took the initiative to talk to her. A bird brought it up. This time, it was her turn to be a woman of few words. No wonder a rookie like her was able to come to the 9th summit. It was really a coincidence. You were brought up here as food? You survived and your friend was swallowed by a bird? Jiuzun's ability to analyze and deduce was obviously very strong as well. Once he connected the dots, he could more or less deduce the cause and effect. This time she only replied with one word. When we fell down just now, the monkey-like thing you encountered was the stone roar. It and the stone essence complement each other. Wherever it is, the stone essence will usually appear. Sometimes it will even attract prey for the stone essence. Jiuzun began to explain to her why he didn't let her get close to the stone wall just now. Oh. His long explanation was only met with a nasal sound from her. Chapter 222. Jiuzun was obviously not someone who was good at leading the conversation. Since Ning Xuema was a woman of few words, he stopped talking as well. The tunnel was silent again. They walked another 7 to 8 li before a ball of white light suddenly appeared in front of them. The two of them had been walking in the blue environment for so long that they were already tired of the view. Seeing this ball of light now, their spirits were lifted. Jiuzun was still able to maintain his composure, but Ning Xuema cheered and ran towards the ball of white light. Oh! Skylight, skylight! God, she was finally coming out. God knew that she was going to go crazy in this blue place. She was still cautious, slowing down when she got close to the white light. She only ran out when she was sure that it was a cave entrance. However, she stopped abruptly when she saw the scenery outside. She had indeed run out of the cave entrance, but it was not the sky outside that she had imagined. It was an extremely large space, 8 times bigger than the capital's stadium. In the middle of this vast space, there was a large tree with luxuriant leaves. Ning Xuema had never seen such a thick and huge tree. Dozens of people might not be able to wrap their arms around it. The tree bark was wrinkled, like the wrinkles of an old man. Compared to its diameter, the tree was not too tall, only 20 to 30 meters tall. Its leaves danced, and its huge crown almost covered the entire space. What surprised Ning Xuema was not this, but the fruits that occasionally appeared between the leaves. Ginseng fruit, ginseng fruit, ginseng fruit. The moment she saw the fruit clearly, only these 3 words were left in her mind. The fruits on the tree were almost exactly the same as the ginseng fruit in the Wu Zhuangguan described in Journey to the West. The fruits were like little children meditating. They had fair skin, smiling facial features, and all 4 limbs. Their small bodies were chubby, the size of a large pear, appearing and disappearing between the leaves of the tree. Who would have thought that such things really existed in this world? She had struck gold. She had really struck gold. There was such a treasure in the stone spirit's stomach. Ning Xuema's eyes narrowed into crescents. Jiuzun, this is your nest, right? So many of your kind. Because of her joy, Ning Xuema was finally willing to speak to Jiuzun again. Jiuzun. He looked at the ginseng fruit on the tree, and a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. Hearing Ning Xuema's words, he pursed his lips and said, "This is a ginseng fruit." "I know. Ginseng fruit and ginseng baby are similar." Ning Xuema hopped forward and counted the fruits through the gaps between the leaves. 1, 2, 3, 8. She spent a great deal of effort to finish counting before turning to look at Jiuzun. Her bright eyes were filled with surprise. A total of 8 fruits. Jiuzun, you're Jiu. Are you sure they're not your brothers? Jiuzun. This sovereign said no. That's good. Ning Xuema was already preparing to climb the tree to pluck the fruits. Jiuzun, do you have any golden striker? She remembered that in Journey to the West, it was said that picking this kind of fruit could only be done with a golden tool. Other tools would not work. No. Jiuzun was also looking at the fruit on the tree. This was the first time he had seen it. Since he had come across it, how could he let it go? What do you need a golden striker for? Jiuzun looked at Ning Xuema, who was rolling up her sleeves and preparing to climb the tree, feeling a little puzzled. The corner of Ning Xuema's mouth lifted slightly. She didn't answer his question. Instead, she nimbly adjusted her body and jumped onto the tree trunk. Chapter 223. When it came to climbing trees, if she claimed to be second, no one would dare to claim to be first. Unexpectedly, just as her feet touched the tree trunk, The sturdy-looking tree bark suddenly caved in. Ning Xiaoma was caught off guard and her feet immediately sank into it. She was shocked and wanted to pull her feet out, but they seemed to be stuck to something and she couldn't exert any strength. Instead, she felt like she had fallen into a quagmire, sinking deeper and deeper. Could this ginseng fruit tree be a man-eating tree? Ning Xiaoma's eyes flashed. She wanted to eat its fruit, not be eaten by it. Her feet sank in at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ning Xiaoma didn't dare to delay, pulling out her dagger and stabbing it into the tree trunk. Pfft! Her dagger seemed to have fallen into a quagmire as it sank into the tree trunk, unable to be pulled out. The tree trunk ate the dagger even faster, reaching the hilt in the blink of an eye. If Ning Xiaoma didn't let go, her hand would be swallowed as well. She could only let go and watch as the dagger that had contributed so much to her adventure sank into the tree trunk, disappearing without a trace. The place where the dagger had been stabbed returned to its original state, not even leaving a scar on the tree bark. Wasn't metal supposed to subdue wood? Why had her millennium cold steel been swallowed by wood? At this moment, her feet were completely submerged in the tree trunk and it was swallowing her calves. The place where she had been swallowed hurt like a knife, as if there were countless little mouths biting inside. She was suspended in the air, with no way to escape. Everything happened very quickly. From the moment Ning Xiaoma climbed up to the moment she fell into the tree, only a dozen seconds had passed. The ginseng fruit tree was actually a man-eating tree. This was too much. Ning Xiaoma couldn't help but look at Jiuzun. Would he save her? Did he have a way to save her? Jiuzun had come to the tree the moment she fell into the tree. His expression was solemn as his small hands emitted rays of light that blasted towards the large tree trunk. The power of his attacks had always been strong. Not to mention a large tree. Even an iron tree of the same thickness could be broken by his attack. But now it was useless. The trunk of the tree ate everything it saw, even the light he emitted. The different colored light collided with the trunk and disappeared. It was useless. With this slight delay, Ning Xiaoma's calf had already sunk in. It was too late. Ning Xiaoma steeled herself and shouted, "Jiuzun, cut off my legs!" Jiuzun's palms paused for a moment as he ignored her. His palms continued to emit the light of different spells as he continued to hack at the tree trunk. However, it was still useless. Ning Xiaoma was anxious. She saw that her knees were about to sink in. If she didn't make a decision, she was afraid that even her thighs couldn't be saved. Her body suddenly rolled up, and her palms were like knives, fiercely cutting off her own legs. At this critical moment, she could only break her leg to save her life. Wait! A ray of white light intercepted, blocking Ning Xiaoma's palms. Ning Xiaoma lowered her head, her eyes blazing as she looked at Jiuzun under the tree. "I don't want to be crippled, but I don't want to die. With Benzin here, I won't let you lose an arm or a leg." Jiuzun's reply was simple as he suddenly punched the tree. Ning Xiaoma's heart almost jumped out of her chest. "Hey, don't touch the tree. It'll eat your fist." Before she could finish her sentence, Jiuzun's small fist had already struck the tree trunk. Ning Xiaoma didn't know how strong Jiuzun's small fist was. Chapter 224. Ning Xiaoma didn't know how strong Jiuzun's small fists were. She only knew that after the ginseng tree was struck by Jiuzun's small fists, it shook as if it had been struck by lightning. Bright red juice seeped out from under the tree bark like blood. It was so huge that its shaking caused the ground to tremble, as if there was an earthquake. A shrill cry that sounded like both laughter and crying came from the depths of the tree, piercing to the ears. Ning Xiaoma's legs were finally spat out by the tree trunk, and she fell from the tree head first. Because the distance was too short, Ning Xiaoma didn't have time to adjust her body. She closed her eyes and gathered her strength above her head, preparing to crash into the tree head-on. A gentle force wrapped around her waist, and just as her body was about to hit the ground, she was forcefully turned around. Ning Xiaoma staggered as her feet finally touched the ground. Then her body tilted and fell to the side. Although the area below her calf that had been swallowed by the tree was still there, she couldn't feel anything. Her body didn't hit the ground, but fell into someone's embrace. Ning Xiaoma opened her eyes and was stunned. Her upper body was resting on Jiuzun's small shoulders. Compared to his small body, her originally small and delicate body seemed incomparably large in his embrace. This scene was too much for her to comprehend. Ning Xiuema wanted to flip over and land on the ground, but the trembling ground beneath her feet suddenly spat out countless long tree roots. Those tree roots seemed to have come alive as they swept towards the two of them. Jiuzun picked her up and sprinted towards the entrance of the cave. The difference in their figures was too great. If Ning Xiuema were to carry him and run, it wouldn't be strange at all. But now he was the one carrying her. It was like a little mouse dragging a shovel, with the big head behind. Luckily, he was fast and his feet didn't touch the ground. Ning Xiuema's body that was suspended in the air was pulled up like a flag fluttering in the wind. Behind them, countless tree roots danced like giant snakes as they chased after the two of them like landslides and tsunamis. Fortunately, Jiuzun's speed was fast and he had many ways to deal with them. Often, when they were about to be caught, he would throw out a few rays of light. Although they couldn't sever the roots, they could still obstruct them slightly. Finally, the two of them returned to the original passageway. Those tree roots seemed to have some misgivings about this passageway. They danced and circled outside the passageway for a while before burrowing back into the ground. Slowly, peace was restored. Ning Xiuema sat at the entrance of the cave. Seeing the tree trunks return to normal, she let out a sigh of relief. Only then did she have time to look at her own legs. The moment she saw them clearly, even though she was used to seeing the world, she still couldn't help but shiver. The area below her knees that had been swallowed by the tree was now covered with countless roots that were as thin as a cow's hair. They were so dense that it was as if she was covered with an inch of hair, or as if she was wearing a pair of thick leather boots. Those fine roots were still automatically drilling into her legs. Now that she had regained a bit of feeling in her legs, it was painful and itchy, making her want to jump up and cut off her legs. God, what kind of monster is this? Ning Xiuema couldn't help but reach out to pull them off. Don't move. Jiuzun reached out to stop her, his eyes fixed on those roots. You won't be able to pull them off. Instead, they'll drill into your hands. Then what should I do? Ning Xiuema felt her hair stand on end. I'll think of something. Jiuzun pressed down on her thighs, stopping her from moving. Chapter 225. I'll think of something. Jiuzun pressed down on her thighs, stopping her from moving. Ning Xiuema sucked in a breath, suppressing the panic in her heart as she steadied herself. All right. I won't move. Jiuzun glanced at her again, admiration flashing through his eyes. If it were any other girl, they would have screamed long ago in such a situation, but she was able to calm down so quickly. It was not simple at all. This girl looked lively, but when it was time to be calm, she could be calmer than anyone else. Smart, wise, lively, calm, cunning, and merciless. These traits were contradictory, but they were perfectly combined in her. Jiuzun took out a snow-white embroidered pouch from his sleeve, taking out several items from it. There was a small jade gourd, a silver knife, silver scissors, and some talismans. After putting these things away, he pressed his hands on her thighs and looked at her again. It hurts a little. Bear with it. His small hands were soft, but for some reason, they gave people a kind of strength that was as stable as a mountain, calming people's hearts. Ning Xiuema's forehead was already covered in sweat from the intense pain in her legs, but she forced herself to smile. Do as you wish, I can take it. Jiuzun nodded. After some thought, he stuffed something into her hands. Bite this. Ning Xiuema looked at it. It was a top-grade jade pendant, in the shape of a phoenix stepping on a branch. The craftsmanship was exquisite, and whether it was the bird or the branches under its claws, they were all very lifelike. This Jiuzun was so casually giving away a treasure. If such a large piece of top-grade jade was brought back to the modern world, it would be worth millions. Yet, he had casually taken it out for her to bite on. It was obvious that he was afraid that she would bite her tongue from the pain when he cast his spell later. Ning Xiuema glanced at the jade pendant again, her heart skipping a beat. A jade pendant in the shape of a phoenix stepping on a branch. Did it represent Yi Qingwan? She pushed it away without batting an eyelid. It's fine, I can take it. This jade pendant is too valuable, I'll break it if I bite it. Jiuzun looked at her strangely. Is your tongue more valuable, or the jade pendant more valuable? Bite it. All right, you're the one who asked me to bite you. Don't feel bad when I bite you. Ning Xuema held the jade pendant in her mouth. Just as she bit down, she felt a sudden pain in her thigh. It was as if two awls had drilled into the air. Following that, she felt a burning pain in her calves and feet, as if she had been skinned alive. The roots, as thin as a cow's hair, were finally shaken out and flew into the air. Jiuzun's movements were as fast as lightning. With a wave of his sleeves, a ball of fire enveloped the thin roots, burning them clean in the blink of an eye. Not a single one escaped. Ning Xuema didn't scream, but the jade pendant in her mouth was bitten into two halves by her, and fell to the ground. The ground beneath his feet was stone slabs. The two halves of the jade pendant fell to the ground and broke into four halves. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. She looked at him and said, I didn't do it on purpose. Jiuzun glanced at the jade pendant on the ground, then looked at her watery eyes. It's fine. Then he looked at her small teeth and said, Your teeth are quite hard. You didn't break them, did you? It seems like he doesn't care. Ning Xuema let out a sigh of relief and shook her head. My teeth are fine. Her legs were still burning with pain. She hurriedly looked at her legs and her face darkened. She was about to cry. There's something wrong with my legs. Not a single one of the roots on her legs was left. Chapter 226. The roots on her legs were indeed gone, but her originally beautiful legs and feet were now covered in blood, and the skin on them was gone. Ning Xuema herself was a doctor. Her medical skills were brilliant, but even she had no way to restore such a large patch of skin. This kind of injury could only be treated with skin grafting, but where was she going to get such a large patch of skin? She couldn't bear to cut it anywhere. If she looked like this in the future, her legs and feet would never be able to see anyone again. Ning Xuema instantly felt the malice of this world. There's no problem with your bones. You won't have any problems moving in the future. Jiuzun's focus was obviously different from hers. He took the small bottle beside him, intending to apply medicine for her. This medicine is quite effective at relieving pain. It'll suppress your pain for now. Ning Xuema reached out to grab his wrist, stopping him from continuing. She looked at him anxiously. Jiuzun, does this medicine of yours have the effect of hastening the growth of skin? You're very capable, so you should have some methods to grow skin and restore it to its original state, right? This person should be omnipotent, right? Right? No, Jiuzun snatched his wrist back. This medicine can stop the pain. Even he couldn't restore her skin? Ning Xuema was instantly powerless, her face falling. She didn't have any other problems, but she loved to be beautiful. She could endure bone-piercing pain, but she couldn't accept not being beautiful anymore. She looked at her bloody feet, her brows furrowed as if she was mourning the death of her parents. It was Jiuzun's first time seeing her like this. He had never seen her so listless even when her life was hanging by a thread. He looked at her legs and pursed his lips, as if he wanted to say something but didn't. Ning Xuema was used to observing people's expressions. She immediately looked at him. What do you want to say? Is there a way? But it's not easy. Jiuzun said faintly. Qilin armor and Qilin saliva can restore damaged skin to its original state, but it has to be used within 3 days of the injury. Otherwise, it won't be effective. Qilins are divine beasts, and they aren't easy to find in this continent. Ning Xuema's eyes, which originally had some brilliance, dimmed down. Qilin in her own era, it was just a legend. It was an extremely rare existence on this continent. If even the Almighty Nine Supremes had said that it would be difficult to find her, then the chances were even slimmer. Her legs were destined to be so ugly that she would never be able to see anyone. I can heal her legs, but you have to take me out of here. A voice suddenly sounded from outside the cave. The voice was a little strange. It sounded like a parrot repeating its words, and it was the voice of a child. Who is it? Ning Xuema looked up. There were other people here. The cave entrance darkened slightly as a little monster walked in. The reason why it was called a little weirdo was because it wasn't that big. It wasn't much taller than Jiuzun. She was naked, with only a few leaves covering the vital parts of her waist. His skin was ocean blue, and the joints of his hands and feet were densely covered with blue crystal-like scales. He had a pair of large, watery eyes, short ocean blue hair, and 2 horns on his head. When Ning Xuema saw him for the first time, the image of the little dragon man that she had seen when she was a child flashed through her mind. What kind of animal was this? Had it cultivated into a spirit? It looked so cute, especially that pair of eyes, and those beautiful double eyelids. Chapter 227. The little fellow held its head high, trying its best to make itself look more dignified and lofty. You guys are taking advantage of this condition. You'll definitely agree to it. You are? Ning Xuema's eyes landed on the scales on his body. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. Mythical Qilin? You're smart. It's this god. The little fellow's chin was raised even higher. Before it could finish its sentence, a white light enveloped it. It couldn't help but shriek. After the white light faded, the little weirdo was gone. What stood in its place was a Qilin beast. It looked similar to the Qilin that Ning Xuema had seen on the computer, except that it wasn't as big as the legends said. It was only the size of a small pony, and its blue scales shone like crystals. It glared at Jiuzun angrily. You plotted against me. Jiuzun looked at it, nonchalant. Are you going to offer up the scales yourself? Or is this god going to pluck them out personally? I've said it before. You guys have to bring me out before I'll consider giving you the scales. Kirin's eyes widened. This god will not agree to any of your conditions. Jiuzun was a man of action. Before he could finish his sentence, the yellow light from his palm had already enveloped Kirin once again. Let this god take them out personally. Kirin was obviously no match for this Jiuzun. Its body was restrained by the yellow light, and it could barely move. Seeing Jiuzun slowly walking towards it with the intention of plucking its scales, Kirin panicked. Finally, it opened its mouth unwillingly. I'll do it myself. I'll do it myself. Humans were too cunning. Too ruthless. Mother, I want to go home. Kirin was in tears. It didn't dare let anyone pluck its scales. If it wasn't done properly, its vitality would be damaged. Ning Xuema glanced at Jiuzun. This brat was so young, but he was still so domineering. She looked at Kirin again. Wasn't a Qilin a mythical beast that was majestic in legends? Why was it so small? It wasn't very capable either, but it was subdued by Jiuzun in just a single exchange. Kirin finally peeled off a scale from its forelimb. It seemed to be very uncomfortable. It was so painful that its horns were trembling. Jiuzun took it and weighed it in his palm. The Qilin tablet then curled up into a small ball the size of a fingernail. It looked like a blue pearl as he passed it to Ning Xuema. Swallow it. Ning Xuema naturally had no objections and swallowed the bead. It was cool and slightly sweet as it slid down his throat. It was as if a cool stream of water had flowed down his stomach. It was indescribably comfortable. Under Jiuzun's guidance, she once again channeled the MF within her to activate the pearl, pushing the nutrients from the pearl towards her legs. About an hour later, Ning Xuema woke up from her meditation. The first thing she did when she opened her eyes was to check her legs. The moment she saw her own legs, her eyes lit up. Amazing! It was too miraculous. Her legs had been bloody and unsightly just a moment ago. But now, they had recovered to their former fair and tender state. This body originally had a pair of beautiful feet. Now the skin on them had completely healed. Perhaps it was because the Qilin tablet had nourished them, but the skin was even more translucent than before. The calluses and blisters that had formed on the soles of her feet, due to the continuous journey, had also disappeared. Her feet were perfect, like half moons. Her nails were round and pink, like light pink pearls. Her entire feet looked like they were carved out of white jade. One couldn't help but want to touch them. Chapter 228. Even Kirin's large eyes were staring at her feet. So pretty. It stuck out its tongue, looking like it wanted to lick them. Jiuzun shifted his gaze away from her feet and stood up, intentionally blocking Kiran's gaze. Since you've recovered, put on your shoes and get up. Ning Xuema had an innocent look on her face. My shoes and socks were all swallowed by that stupid tree. I don't have any shoes to wear. Jiuzun paused. Wait here. He turned and walked out. Ning Xuema looked at his small back and couldn't help but rub her nose. This little fellow looked like a child, but his actions and words were all adult. His every action carried the innate aura of a venerable. Where was he going to get her shoes? There was only a ginseng fruit tree and some weeds here. Was he going to weave a pair of straw sandals for her? Forget it. She didn't need to worry about this problem. This little fellow looked like he had a lot of ideas. She just needed to wait for him to get her shoes to wear. When Ning Xuema was on a mission, although she was the one who came up with the big and small plans, she didn't really do much in daily life. For example, barbecuing wild animals or preparing some daily necessities were all done by her subordinates. In this aspect, she was still very good at stretching out her hands and opening her mouth for food. Therefore, she didn't feel uncomfortable being served by others. The only thing she wasn't used to was being served by such a small child. From this point, she felt like she was destroying the future of her motherland. But when she thought of his identity, a ginseng child, she calmed down. She was a little bored sitting there, so she looked at her feet again. She was quite satisfied with this pair of feet. In ancient times, a woman's feet were her second face. Although women in this era didn't have to bind their feet, they were still small and delicate, making them more pleasing to the eye. When she looked up, she saw that Kiran had turned back into a little blue person. It was still standing there, its eyes still looking at Ning Xuema's feet. She didn't know what it was thinking. Ning Xuema lifted her foot generously. Does it look good? Kiran was an honest person. He nodded and answered without hesitation, yes. Ning Xuema smiled with satisfaction. She looked at Kiran from head to toe. It looked a little uneasy, and a little timid, like a real child, a lost child. Ning Xuema realized that she had been quite lucky with children recently. The Jiuzun she met was a child, and now, the Qilin she met was also a child. However, other than his appearance, Jiuzun didn't look like a child at all. The aura around him was also becoming more and more shocking. On the other hand, Kiran was really like a child. He looked like a 5 or 6-year-old, but his intelligence and temperament were like that of a 7 or 8-year-old. Ning Xuema looked at it and felt pity for it. She started to chat with it. While chatting, Ning Xuema learned that this little Qilin wasn't a native of this place. It came from the mysterious Qilin clan. 1,000 years ago, because it was looking for a spiritual medicine, it was accidentally swallowed by a stone essence. Since then, it had been trapped here, unable to leave. It also said that there was another person who was swallowed at the same time as it. That person had the same goal as it, which was to find the ginseng fruit. Therefore, they had traveled together at that time. When the stone essence swallowed them, it was that person who protected it, preventing it from being hurt by the sky-splitting wind at the entrance. However, that person fell into a deep sleep after coming in. No matter how it called out to him, or even bit him, he didn't wake up. Instead, his breath became weaker and weaker until it finally stopped breathing. You're tuning into the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.